I am Rick Sass. I'm a former president of TENS, and I am here today talking with Rob Slee about our April 16th TENS meeting conversation. We're going to have Rob as our speaker. And Rob, I'd like to start off by asking you to tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, first of all, thanks, Rick, for inviting me on this and for letting me speak to the group in April. I'm looking forward to that. I'm a guy who's from Toledo, Ohio originally. I grew up on a farm. I've been in Charlotte, North Carolina for 25 years. I'm an unusual fellow in that I don't describe easily. So I've owned almost 20 mid-sized businesses personally. I run and own a large investment banking firm in the middle market where we help represent sellers, represent buyers, and raise several $100 million a year for middle market companies. And 5 years ago, I started Midas Nation, which is really what I'll be talking about in April.
Very good. So your program for April 16th, the TENS meeting, is about Midas marketing. What exactly is Midas marketing, Rob?
It's the new way to market, especially small and middle market firms, to create extreme value in the company. So rather than just create a lifestyle, we'd like everyone in America who owns a business to have a great lifestyle and have a valuable business. And Midas marketing is the way to bring the market to you, amongst other things, for owners to be able to achieve that.
Okay. So what's the payoff for doing Midas marketing?
It's a behavioral change more than anything. What we've seen is that most owners are still in the linear sort of world that they had been in for the last 20 years, where they go out and knock on one door at a time, and hopefully somebody will answer, a prospective customer, that they try to close that customer. Rather than do that, we're nicheaholics. And so what we do is form niches in these companies and then bring the whole market niche to the niche. So it's a pull marketing, which is totally opposite, obviously, of the old-fashioned push marketing.
Okay. Can you tell me about one of the Midas managers that you've profiled in your book?
Well, they tend to be half the chapters, because they're story chapters. Almost every chapter is a story. Half of those are me, and I've just changed my name because you just don't want to read about me on how we grew businesses. The other they're not famous people. What they are is they're just people like us, basically, that had a different way of looking at business, used a different business model, pulled the market to themselves or to their company, and had extreme success. So I think there's only one or two chapters in the whole book where I use the person's actual name. And so most of it is just sort of anonymous people, although they're all real stories. They're anonymous. I tend not to talk about individuals in the book at all.
Okay. Can anyone become a Midas manager?
Yes, it is. And we've evolved I had a book that came out 3 years ago called Midas Managers as well. And in the period between Midas Managers and Midas Marketing, I had an evolution of thought, and let's hope that always continues. Let's hope I never stop thinking. And what we learned was now, instead of trying to make people Midas managers, where life's battlefield kind of does that, what we do now is help people convert to value architects. And most of my talk, by the way, in April will be on how we all, and the answer is yes, we all can become a value architect, where we design compelling value propositions. And you don't have to own a firm to do this, by the way. I mean, we all need to go through life adding value to everything we do. And so the book really is about how to learn to become a value architect and design and deliver compelling value propositions.
Okay, so what should an entrepreneur or business executive do to be a Midas manager?
Yeah, once again, I'm going to encourage them to be value architects, because the problem with being a Midas manager is typically that takes 20 years and you've fallen down about as much as you've gotten up, and then finally you figure it out. We want to shortcut all that. I don't want people to have to read my stuff then 20 years later be successful. I'd rather be 20 minutes later. And so what we've learned is that they first of all have to think in terms of niches, because we're all relatively small. I mean, none of us are running IBM, I don't think, in the audience. And so, I mean, and myself, I've always owned these sort of lower middle market businesses. And instead of trying to own a business that has a monolithic customer base and has just sort of one value proposition that you try to keep blowing out against the market, what we do is we like to have a firm that has 5 or 6 niches, each of varying size, but each has sustainability, high profitability, and takes very few employees. I hate to say it, I'm not solving America's employment problem. I'm solving business owners' wealth creation problem. And those two are at odds, I hate to say it. Because here's the metrics, and this is shocking to most people. Most people think this can't be. I can't see it any other way. The metrics for us are 2 to 3 million in sales and 700,000 in profits per employee. You see, most firms don't get a quarter of that because they're not set up right. They're not set up to get these sort of dynamic metrics.
Right. Okay. So can you give me a quick summary of the step-by-step instructions for people who want to follow the Midas marketing strategies in their own businesses, that value architecture you talk about?
Sure. It starts with doing an honest intellectual capital inventory, because this is all about leveraging know-how. We call intellectual capital know-how, and I think most people would call it the same. So you take an inventory and get your key people, your key stakeholders. They don't have to be employees. They can be people that know you and your business real well. And take an inventory, 2 or 3 hours of saying, okay, what do we know in this firm? What are our systems? What do our people know? What are our core competencies? That's what we're looking for. And that's the first step. The second step is doing a wants, needs assessment of the marketplace. The markets that we're aimed at, niche or otherwise, but let's hope it's niches, what do they need out there? It doesn't matter if somebody's supplying it right now, but what do they really need? And a third column between wants and needs is compliance. Because the best place to ever go is where people don't have a choice, but they have to make a certain move, and we love compliance sort of niches. But in any event, so that takes another couple hours. And then what you really have is you have what's staring at you is what you know and what the market needs. From that, it should be 3, 4, 5 niches should present themselves. And if you think about it, it should be pretty obvious at that point what you're good at and what the market needs. That those should come together. And then it's a matter of, well, how do you know if those are real niches? Well, then that's where the real work begins, because you're talking to people, you're investigating, you're out in the marketplace. Most of the work isn't done in the conference room, of course. It's done out where the markets really are. And then it's a Silicon Valley approach, believe it or not. You test, fail, test, fail, fail. And most people give up about the third round. Well, we don't, because we know if you test and fail quickly and cheaply, well, then you can go 5 or 6 or 7 rounds, iterations of this test. Sooner or later, somebody eats the dog chow, meaning that somebody consumes your value proposition. Aha, that's the moment where you profile that somebody, could be a person, could be an institution, whatever it is, a company, and you say, are there 100 more like that person? Would they eat our dog chow? And as soon as you know the answer to that, that's when you attract the whole market niche to you. Not before then, but then it's time to pull the whole market, because there's no use pulling the whole market until you know somebody wants to eat the dog chow. And so that's when it gets real interesting, because within just a matter of months, and I'll explain this more in the talk, within a matter of months, we can bring the whole market niche to you, or we can show you how to bring the whole market niche. What used to take 5 years to build a $5 to $10 million niche, we can do in 5 months. And that's the shocking proof. And we can do that with just 1 or 2 employees. So think about what just changed. Instead of taking 20 years to build a $30 or $40 million sales business, now we can do that in 2 to 3 years with immense profitability and without, I hate to say it, for America's sake, without hundreds of employees.
So you're looking for real entrepreneurs here, obviously.
They have to be willing. That's the behavioral change. They have to be willing to fail.
Absolutely.
See, I know more than anybody on earth, because we build a system based on failure. So I wrote an article a while back, My Positive Relationship with Failure, because what happens is if you're unwilling to fail, or you give up after the first or second or third round, well, then you're never going to be successful. Because where do niches really come from? It comes from you supplying some sort of product or service that nobody else has gone the distance on to figure out if, in fact, that would be acceptable. People quit early. So have a positive relationship with failure through life, and you'll succeed. Isn't that a paradox?
It's great, though. It's something we've been talking about at TENS for a while, so I'm glad to hear that. That's fabulous. So can you tell me a little bit about Midas Institutes and the Midas Nation community that you've put together?
Yeah, I had this idea 5 years ago that's turned out to be true, that there are a fair number of us, especially in America, because this is an American, initiative, a fair number of us that wanted to create a better lifestyle in our business and wanted to create extreme value in the process, with that we didn't think they were mutually exclusive. Whereas most people, I think, maybe they wake up in the morning and think I could either have a great lifestyle or I can have a great business, but I can't have both. Well, it turns out you can have both. I thought several things that have turned out to be true. One is that our mantra is, together there's nothing we can't do. It turns out that's true. Together, get rid of the blue state, red state stuff. Together, there's no problem we can't whip. And we've proven that in the last 2 or 3 years. There's no business problem. There's no social problem. There's no economic problem. We're just not used to working together anymore. But in Midas Nation, we work together. And so, we're agnostic to politics. No, we don't care.
That's great.
But what we do care is that when we pick a fight, whether it's for one owner or whether it's for the group, that we work together and we incentivize people. You can't expect people to do something for nothing. We incentivize the group to work together. And I'll give example after example of this in April, where we move a mountain together. Whereas individually, we can't, you can't do much.
Right. So we're sort of the opposite of Congress.
We are totally the polar opposite. And if they would just tune in to one of our webinars, what they would see is we could move America where it's at right now, which I think is underperforming. We have an underperforming asset called America. We could move America in just a couple years totally to where we used to be, back in the day, where nobody wanted to compete against America because we were so innovative, so creative, and we did work together. There was a point that we worked together, and we sort of gotten away from that.
Absolutely. So what's the one key thing that TENS members can walk away with from your program in April, Rob?
What they'll learn, and the number one thing is, and this is something that's not even in the book, I hate to say it, so they have to come to the talk.
Good.
I've evolved thinking in terms of mashups. And what's a mashup? A mashup is where you bring 2 or 3 different competencies or different services together in a bundle. And that's your value proposition. See, the problem with creating a sustainable niche is if you just bring one service, well, a lot of people can copy that service, right? Mm-hmm. But if you do 3 or 4 different things, brand it, bundle it, and deliver it seamlessly to the customer, well, no one's going to do that because that's a lot of work, mm-hmm. right? And so what we've done is create a process to, what are those 3 or 4 things? So you got to quickly say, what are the things that the market wants that you could bring together in a bundle? But then the more important, as important is, how then do you alert the crowd that that's available? And so we call it crowdsourcing. The book is on crowdsourcing. So Midas Marketing is mainly on crowdsourcing. And then what I'll show the audience is, how do you form a crowd? And you pretty much have it in Seattle. I've been to Seattle 100 times. You have a community in Seattle that cares about each other. I'm not going to name any cities, but there are some cities where that's not the case. And so just within Seattle and the Great Northwest, I believe you have everything you need to succeed in any way you want to, down to an individual level. And I'll show the crowd on April 16th how to do that.
Fantastic. So what are the common traits you find among the Midas Nation community?
Intellectual curiosity. The one thing that separates the people that really leverage their know-how, which is what we're talking about in terms of lifestyle and creating wealth, is they say, I wonder if that will work. Oh, okay. Well, let's pull that thread a little bit farther. I wonder if we can make that work, and then have the steps to make that work. And if you don't have that intellectual curiosity, what happens is, and I hate to say it, most people don't, but if you have any intellectual curiosity, what can happen is you can learn how to channel that into some really interesting value propositions and interesting niches. But it starts there, and I think everybody in Midas Nation has that. That's what drew them to the nation.
Wonderful. How big is the Midas Nation community, and what's your vision for future growth opportunities?
Yeah, we're over 50,000 people, and it is worldwide. Even though I started out, once you start proclamating things and putting books out there, well, it's free to the world. So it's free to join, free to play. There's no pay to play ever in this. And so in that sense, we're probably 20% foreign, and I speak a lot outside the U.S., so that draws people too. The vision is, and you're catching me in transition almost right where I sit, is we've been mentoring over 100 different companies around the country. It's certainly not a Carolinas initiative. It's a U.S. initiative. We're about to start buying companies. So in the next few months, we'll buy, and I don't mean Rob Slee buying companies. I mean, we'll buy companies as a community. We'll be the team members who are tasked with creating extreme value will own most of the company, and we'll apply all of our techniques and all of our business models and strategies and crowdsourcing to our companies. And I'm intending to buy several hundred companies. So this isn't one of these, I've already owned a bunch. Now it's time to ratchet it up. So I started Midas Nation with this in mind, that we would form the virtual variable capabilities. We're agnostic to geography. We're agnostic to industry. This works in all industries, all geographies. And then we'd go about buying cast-offs. I only buy cast-offs. So something somebody else doesn't want because they couldn't create value. That's the only thing I ever buy. And so we'll start buying cast-offs later this year.
So it sounds like you're going through a big transition. We've caught you at a good time.
Yeah, this is a time where I'm still enough where I can talk about it. I'm not going warp 9 yet, in the next 3 months or so, I'll be at Warp 9 and I'll curtail my speaking.
Fabulous. Well, it's been wonderful talking with you, Rob. We look forward to having you in April. I'm sure the TENS members will get a great deal out of your discussion. Thanks for joining us today.
No, thank you, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy it, and I'll enjoy being there.